Hi everyone! You might remember that in our last episode I told you guys that we won't be featuring any sports games here, but I would grant an exception to one category of sport. Now if you read the title and you understand what it means, then you already know that the exception I'll make is for motorsports. For those of you who didn't know what it meant, I have to give you a little bit of a warning, because I'm about to really geek out on you as I introduce you to my favorite sporting event, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Le Mans is an endurance race that evolves constantly as time goes on. It currently has 8.5 miles of track, thousands of horsepower at any given time, backed up with 81 years of racing history and counting. But one figure has never changed. Everyone is there to see which team can go the furthest, and they only have 24 hours to do it. The best car makers in the world come to Le Mans to earn bragging rights. Bentley, Bugatti, Jaguar, Porsche, Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, Audi, and Ford have all racked up multiple wins here. Men have died trying to win here, and they still do. The King of Cool made a movie about it. Part of the race takes place on the French National Highway. Once the race starts, it stops for no one. Even in 1955, when a Mercedes-Benz crashed and took 84 lives with it, they still didn't stop the race. In my opinion, this race is the best thing France has ever created. But then again, I don't really have a taste for wine. One thing is for sure though, I guarantee you'll never see grown men cry like they do at Le Mans. They cry when their car breaks down before they ever get a chance to drive it. They cry when they're winning. They cry when they've won. They cry when they've lost. They cry when their car starts belching fire in the last hours of the race for no explainable reason, other than the car gods just want to find out what their tears taste like. This isn't an endurance race. It's a torture test for both the men and machines involved. I love it. Now let's get to the game. The version we're looking at was developed by Eutechnyx and released in 1999. It was released in Europe as Le Mans 24 Hours, but for us Americans, it was rebranded Test Drive Le Mans, apparently so that they could mislead and capitalize on the Pontiac Le Mans Owners Club. But it has nothing to do with the Test Drive series. The first thing that jumps out at you is that this game has an announcer.
Welcome to this year's Le Mans 24 Hours.
In case you're not familiar with his distinctive voice, you're hearing Tiffany Dell. He's a well-known automotive journalist in Europe and a former professional race car driver who actually raced at Le Mans several times. He even achieved a very respectable third-place podium finish there in 1990. The amazing thing is that Tiff's own experience and personality comes out in his commentary. If you're familiar with his mannerisms, it's nice to see that his lines don't sound like they were forced on him. He sounds genuinely thrilled to be doing the voiceover.
Lister Cars. The Newcastle United Football Club backed Lister Storm with its 7-litre V12 Jaguar power plant. My car in the late 90s and my favourite all the way from its base in Leatherhead, Surrey.
I'll understand if you're not a fan of his work, but to me it's a big plus to have him in the game. The graphics are okay by PlayStation standards, but I have to admit, they really show their age now and the draw distances get pretty bad. The racing is fast and exciting, but it can slow down if too much is happening on screen. The game has all the usual race modes you would expect, plus the 24-hour race. You can also select how long you want the race to last, whether you want to play the full 24 hours, or compress it down to as little as 12 minutes. As you race, you have to adjust to conditions on the track, like oil slicks or changes in the weather. The weather is inconsistent, but that's actually pretty realistic, because since the track is so long, it's not uncommon for it to start raining on one end while still staying dry on the other end. Picking the right tires and aerodynamic setting can give you an edge over your opponents. It's always a great feeling when you suddenly realize that you're the fastest thing on the track because you correctly picked just the right combination for the conditions ahead. It has everything you would expect from this type of racing game, but without a doubt, the best thing they added is an adjustable rev limiter. It seems so simple, but it really makes things exciting, and I've never seen it in any other racing game. You adjust it with the L2 and R2 buttons. If you want to go faster, then adjust the limiter so you can get to higher revs. But unlike any other racing game, you can't stay in the high revs for too long because you'll overheat the engine.
Well, that's a very worrying sign. Smoke is pouring from that engine.
There's no use in running the engine as hard as you can if you end up killing the car before you can finish the race. so it really forces you to strategize about how to exploit other settings and techniques to your advantage, which just so happens to be the most exciting part of the real race. The rev limiter was a stroke of genius. Such a simple addition to the gameplay makes the player consider their own choices in a way that's similar to the choices these racing teams have to make during the real thing. But even though you could play around with the settings, I would never say this game falls into the racing simulator genre. It's definitely arcade style. If we compare driving physics, then Gran Turismo would eat its lunch. But I still like the way that it encourages you to know what each setting does, and because of that, it's a great combination of both worlds. I'm an avid Gran Turismo fan, but I can still have a blast with either of these games. When I bought this game, it was my introduction to this amazing race. It wasn't a game to me, it was more like an education. I've watched the entire race every year since, and I'm the type of person who won't even sit down to watch the Super Bowl, so that says something. The game is a snapshot of what Le Mans looked like in the 90s. It becomes a little depressing when you realize that most of the teams featured here don't exist anymore. But the race at Le Mans waits for no one. If you can't get your car on the grid, then the race goes on without you. One year you're a top contender, the next year you're replaced by a slice of pepperoni pizza.
Well, if any driver deserved a win today, it was him. What a great drive.
God, I love the cheat codes in this game. It did have a PS2 release, and unfortunately that's what brings us to this episode's flip side of the coin. The PS1 version is excellent, as I've already told you, so you would expect the PS2 version to be even better. But this is a rare instance where the supposedly inferior version is actually better. At least they gave the game back its real title, but even that can't turn this game into a 99-cent gem. The PS2 release is actually just a port of the Dreamcast version, but with a few visual enhancements added. This version was not developed by Eutechnyx. Instead, it was developed in-house by its publisher, Infogrames. At first glance, the layout is similar to the PS1 version, but while the graphics got a major upgrade, the gameplay is just awful. Remember the adjustable rev limiter that I praised so much in the PS1 version? It's gone now. That's a huge blow to the gameplay because it was one of my favorite features in the other game. Without it, it doesn't feel like an endurance race. It's just any other generic racing game on the PS2. The racing is too easy as well. On my first race, I made my way from the back of the grid to the front in just 2 laps, and even with some big crashes, I was never in any fear of losing the race. That's not the only problem. The loading times are aggravating, the menus are confusing, the physics engine feels like they stole it from a shopping cart simulator, and the textures are randomly inconsistent, which provides good proof that this was a rushed port. And unfortunately for this game, that's probably why no one remembers it. It was released on August 13th, 2001, but I'm betting that they were still way behind schedule because Gran Turismo 3 was released just a month earlier, on July 10th, 2001. Trust me, unless my audience consists of confused grandmothers, none of you bought this game when it was new. Also, there's no Tiff Needle. Did he know this game was going to be bad and just decide to refuse the next paycheck? Was he too busy playing Gran Turismo 3? All versions of the game are dirt cheap, and I've already given you my recommendation. But if you'd like to become a fan of the real thing, the 82nd running of this exciting race is happening this Saturday. I'll put some links in the description below to help you out, and if I have any fans of Le Mans watching this, I'll see you in the comments. As always, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.
Quite dramatically, Flames, it looks as though it's going to be a repeat of a rather messed up pit stop, such as unfortunately happened to the Peugeot team at Monza. So Flames all over the place, quickly being extinguished, but what we did